I never told her. I've played that sentence in my head maybe 1,000 times. I never told her. And not just the words, the moment, the air, the tremble in my hands that never made it to her skin, the sound of the coffee machine in the background, the wind catching the curtains behind her shoulders, her smile, the kind that made you forget what pain felt like, or time. I had it all, right there, a life about to begin, and I let it dissolve like sugar in black coffee, slowly, silently, until it wasn't there at all. The letters still in my notebook, top shelf, back corner, torn edge from where I hesitated to rip it out. It starts with her name, Elena, just that. And for the last 11 years, I haven't had the courage to read past the first line. It was raining that day, not the kind of rain that chases you indoors, but soft, quiet, like the sky was grieving something it couldn't explain. I was sitting by the window of my small one-bedroom apartment on 12th Avenue SW in Calgary. Third floor, south-facing, with a view of the alley and just a sliver of the skyline behind the trees. The mug in my hand had chipped on the handle. The coffee was too strong, bitter, the way she used to make it, without asking how I liked it. She just said, "You'll learn to love it like this." And I did. I loved everything the way she made it. That morning I watched the rain slide down the window in long, heavy streaks. It felt like the city itself was holding its breath. Cars moved slower, pedestrians didn't run. They walked, soaking, unbothered. There was no wind, no thunder, just the weight of water and memory. That was the day I was supposed to tell her I was leaving, and instead I wrote a letter. I didn't plan to write. I was supposed to speak, face to face. We were going to meet that evening, around 6, in our usual spot by the river near Prince's Island Park. We called it Our Bench, though I doubt anyone else knew. It was near the edge of the walking path, slightly hidden by a crooked birch tree, with just enough view of the Bow River flowing by and the skyline cutting through the sky like quiet glass. I had played the whole scene in my head. She'd arrive in that oversized sweater she always wore when it rained. Navy blue, sleeves down to her thumbs, hood half up. Her hair would be damp from walking, and she'd pull it into a loose knot as she sat down. I'd greet her with a joke, something dumb, like always, and she'd roll her eyes and smile. And then I'd tell her that I got the job offer in Montreal, that I'd be moving in 3 weeks, and that I wanted her to come with me. But instead, I sat by that rainy window and wrote. I wrote because I was scared. Not of her answer. I knew what it would be. I was scared of the moment after, of how everything would change. If she said yes, then it was real. We'd leave Calgary, the city we met in, the places that knew us as we were. If she said no. God, I couldn't bear the sound of her walking away. So I wrote 4 pages. 4 damn pages of everything I'd never said aloud. That I loved her since that night in Kensington when we got lost looking for a Thai place and ended up eating tacos under a parking sign. That her laugh still echoed in my head on silent mornings. That every time I touched her back, just below the shoulder blades, I felt like I was home. That I had never, not once, imagined a future that didn't include her in it. And then I folded it, slipped it into the back of the notebook, and never gave it to her. That evening, I went to the bench. She showed up, exactly as I imagined. Sweater, hair, the soft rustling sound of wet shoes on gravel. We sat. She talked about her work, a difficult client, some dumb email. She laughed. I laughed. And when she asked, "So, what did you want to tell me?" I said, "Nothing important, just glad we're here." She smiled. Me too. And that was the last normal evening we ever had. A week later, I told her about Montreal. Not on the bench, not with a letter, just over the phone. She paused for a second, said she was happy for me, then said she'd stay. "I don't think I'm meant to leave Calgary," she told me. "This city. It's home. My parents are here, my studio, my memories." I said I understood, and I did. But not really. Because what I never said, not then, not ever, was, "You were home." When I left everything. The apartment, the bike, the framed photo of us in Canmore with our cheeks red from the cold and her toque sliding off her head. I boxed it all, gave it to a friend, and told myself it was cleaner this way. But I took the notebook. I always took the notebook. In Montreal, I told myself I'd start over. New job, new apartment. But I checked her Instagram almost every day. She didn't post much, just paintings, coffee shots. Once, a photo of the Bow River in winter, our bench in the distance, barely visible under a layer of snow. No caption, just a snowflake emoji. That one. That one hurt more than I expected. A year passed. I didn't visit Calgary. She didn't call. I met people, went on dates. But every time I tried to talk about childhood, music, or what scared me at 3 a.m., I thought about how easily Eleanor used to read me, how I didn't have to explain anything. She just knew. I thought about calling. Once, I even dialed. But when the tone started ringing, I hung up. I told myself it was better to leave her in peace, that maybe she'd moved on, that maybe I was just a chapter she'd already closed. But the truth, I was terrified that she'd answer, and I wouldn't know what to say. Last month, I came back to Calgary. Not for her. At least that's what I told myself. It was for a conference, 3 days, downtown. I stayed at a hotel on 4th Street, 10 blocks from our old apartment. On the second evening, I skipped dinner, walked the streets we used to walk, and ended up at Prince's Island Park. It was fall. Leaves curled at the edges like burnt paper. The river was lower than I remembered, but the bench was still there, and it was empty. I sat down. Same angle, same creaking sound when you lean too far back. The birch tree had grown, the bark peeling like old skin. I closed my eyes and could almost hear her voice. And that's when I finally did it. I pulled the notebook from my coat, hands shaking, opened to the back, unfolded the letter. Her name, Elena, still there, still mine. I read it, all of it, slowly, like a prayer. And when I finished, I cried. Not the kind of cry that makes a scene, but silent, trembling, salt on lips kind of cry. The kind you feel in your ribs, because it wasn't just a letter. It was a life I never lived, words I never gave her, a love I never asked her to fight for. And now it's too late. The day I found out. I wasn't supposed to find out anything. I had a flight back to Montreal at 9:25 a.m. I woke up early, packed the last of my things, and checked out just after 7. But something, I still don't know what, pulled me back. I wasn't done. So instead of heading straight to the airport, I took a detour, walked back toward Kensington, past the cafe where we first met. I wanted to see it, just once more. It was still there. Oak Finch, with its crooked sign and mismatched chairs outside. I stepped inside. The same burnt smell of over-roasted beans. The same girl behind the counter, though years older now. I ordered a drip coffee and sat at the corner table where she and I first shared that dumb croissant and laughed about nothing for 2 hours straight. The table had new carvings in the wood, a couple names, a heart, a broken one next to it. I ran my fingers over them. Then I opened my phone and searched her name, and that's when I saw it. It wasn't a status update, not even a recent photo. It was a post from someone else, a friend, a black and white picture of Elena's painting with 3 words underneath. She was light. The timestamp? 2 weeks ago. I kept scrolling. More posts, condolences, quotes about grief, photos from her studio, a video of her laughing, spinning in slow motion with paint on her hands, and her dog barking in the background. Then the caption that stopped everything. 1 year ago today, you left us. I sat frozen, coffee untouched, breath tight in my chest. 1 year ago. And I didn't know. I was alive, moving, talking. I had celebrated a birthday, eaten cake, made plans, and she was already gone. I walked out of the cafe like I'd been punched. The air felt heavier, or maybe I was just hollow. I went back to the park, the bench, our bench. I sat down and stared at the river, not seeing anything, not hearing anything, just the echo of all I never said. That night in the hotel, I didn't sleep. I sat with the notebook open on the bed, rereading the letter like it could somehow change the past. Like if I read it enough times, I'd wake up and find out none of this had happened. That she'd text me some silly meme or voice message with that giggle at the end, but it never came. Instead, I searched deeper and found the obituary. Short, simple. Passed peacefully, loved by all, a light gone too soon. No details, no cause, just an absence in black font. I didn't cry that time. I just stared and whispered her name until my voice cracked. The next morning, I didn't get on the plane. I changed my flight, rented a car, and drove. The directions were clear. A small town, about 40 minutes outside the city. Quiet, open fields, rolling hills, a little church with white siding and a yard full of golden leaves. Her grave was near the back, under a row of old trees. No other visitors. No sound but the breeze and the crunch of leaves under my boots. Her name, her birth date, the dash, and the end date, and under that, etched in tiny letters. She was always a beginning. I stood there for maybe an hour, hands in pockets, wind in my ears, mouth dry. And then I did what I should have done years ago. I read the letter out loud, all 4 pages. To the wind, to the sky, to the stone, to her. When I was done, I knelt, pressed my palm to the earth, and whispered, "I'm sorry. For waiting, for doubting, for thinking I had more time, for not knowing the last time would be the last." On my way back to the car, I saw something strange. On a bench near the cemetery's edge, there was a notebook. Not mine, not hers, but it looked familiar, the same style she used to buy. I opened it. Blank. Except the first page. 1 line. In handwriting that looked so much like hers, I almost dropped it. If you love someone, don't wait. Don't write. Don't wonder. Say it. I never found out who left it. Maybe a coincidence. Maybe not. Maybe it was her. Or maybe the world has a way of speaking when words fail. After I left the cemetery, I drove without a destination. Just open road. Prairie fields stretching out on both sides. The sky in Alberta always felt too big for one person, like it was made to carry your pain if you didn't have space for it yourself. I remember Elena once said, "This sky is like God's inbox, full of unsent messages." That line came back to me on Highway 22 as I drove south toward Turner Valley. I didn't plan it. I just went. Windows down. Wind roar against my face. I wanted the cold. I wanted to feel something that wasn't regret. I stopped at a campsite we once stayed at during a late September weekend. The fire pits were still there, the trees thinner now, the lake lower, but the ground still remembered us. We were young then, stupid, loud. I'd brought a guitar I couldn't really play, and she'd brought marshmallows she forgot we both hated. We sat by the fire for hours, wrapped in one sleeping bag, trying to make constellations out of stars we didn't know the names of. I remember she asked me, out of nowhere, "If I disappeared tomorrow, what would you remember about me?" And I had laughed. I didn't answer, just kissed her forehead. But now I wish I'd answered. I would have told her, "I'd remember how you danced barefoot on cold floors, how you hummed old songs under your breath when you cooked, how you said fuck when you were happy and damn when you were sad, how you loved the world like it hadn't broken you yet, how you never once said goodbye without looking back." That night, I didn't stay at a hotel. I slept in the car, parked by the trees, engine off, wrapped in a blanket that still smelled like old air freshener. It rained again. Not hard, just enough to make the world feel softer. I dreamed of her voice, not her face, her voice, telling me, "It's okay." And when I woke up, for the briefest moment, I believed her. I drove back to Calgary the next morning. Didn't go to the airport, didn't go home. I went to her old studio. The building was still there, off 17th Ave SW, near the bookstore and the Vietnamese restaurant she loved. The windows were dusty. The for rent sign hung crooked, as if the building itself was tired of waiting. But the wall beside the door, the brick one she once painted sunflowers on, still had traces of yellow, faded, cracked, but hers. I stood there for a long time. People passed. No one looked. And for the first time in years, I let myself say it aloud, without fear of sounding stupid. I loved you. I love you. And I'm sorry. I found her mother's number a few days later. It was saved in an old email thread from years ago, something about surprising Elena for her birthday. I didn't know if it was still active. I didn't know what I'd even say. But I called. She answered on the third ring. Hello? I froze. Her voice was softer than I remembered. Hi. This is... I paused. It's Daniel. I was close with Elena. There was silence. Then, I remember you. I didn't expect that. I wasn't sure if I deserved to be remembered. I just found out, I said. I didn't know. I'm so sorry. There was another pause. Then she whispered. She spoke of you. Even after all that time. I swallowed hard. I didn't come to the funeral. I didn't know. She sighed gently. She wouldn't have minded. She hated funerals. We both laughed, quietly, like we were afraid to wake something. Then she said, she left something for you. I blinked. What? A letter. She told me to hold it. Said one day you'd come back. I didn't believe her, but here you are. The envelope was pale blue, the kind you find in old stationery shops, tucked between antique postcards and forgotten wedding invitations. Her mother met me at a small cafe near Marda Loop. She wore a dark coat and a silver scarf, and she looked like time had wrapped itself gently around her shoulders. Not cruel, just firm. She didn't cry. Neither did I. We just sat for a while, sipping tea that went cold before the silence did. And then she reached into her bag, pulled out the letter, and slid it across the table. I stared at it like it might vanish. I knew that handwriting, her name on the front, my name beneath it. No dear, no to, just Daniel. I didn't open it there. I couldn't. Her mother understood. She didn't ask questions, didn't say anything except she wrote it during her last week. She said if you ever came back, this would matter. Then she left. Just like that. Quiet. Decent. Like Elena. I held the letter the entire walk back to my hotel. Didn't put it in my pocket. Didn't let it out of my fingers. Just walked the streets of Calgary with her name between my palms, like a prayer I wasn't ready to speak. Back in the room, I sat on the floor, not the bed, because that felt more honest. The city buzzed outside the window, but I didn't look. I didn't need a view. I needed her voice. I opened the letter. Daniel, if you're reading this, it means you came back. That alone makes my chest ache and my eyes smile. I always knew you would. Maybe not for me, but for something. For yourself, maybe. For the past. For the bench. I don't know. But I knew you'd come. There's a funny thing about dying. It makes everything simple. Not easier, but simpler. Like all the nonsense melts away and only the truth stays. So here's my truth. I loved you. I always did. Even when you left, even when you didn't say it, even when I pretended I was fine and told myself I had moved on. I didn't. You were my favorite story, the one I reread in my head during rainstorms and half-sleeps. I waited, not because I expected you to come back, but because part of me wasn't done. And I want you to know, I found peace. It came slowly, in little things. Paint, dog fur, the way the sun hit the trees in October. But part of that peace was forgiving you, for not saying it, for being scared, for leaving before you were ready. We were both scared, Daniel. But fear doesn't kill love. Silence does. So I'm breaking the silence, even from here. I loved you. I still do. And if there's something after all this, I'll love you there too. Be kind to yourself, and if you ever find someone who sees you like I did, don't wait. Don't write it down. Don't hide it in notebooks. Say it. Say it out loud. E? I didn't cry when I read it, not at first. I just sat there, stunned by the calm of her voice, the grace in her words, the way she still reached out to hold my hand, even after she was gone. Then I read it again, and again. And on the third time, I broke. Not loudly, not all at once, just a slow unraveling. The kind of grief that doesn't look like pain. It looks like silence, like stillness, like a man on a hotel floor holding a letter against his chest, rocking gently, whispering, "I'm sorry." I didn't sleep that night. I walked. From Marder Loop, through Mission, over the Elbow River, down into the Beltline. It was 2 a.m. when I reached our bench again. It had rained earlier. The seat was damp, but I sat anyway. And I read her letter out loud. To the river, to the wind, to whatever part of her might still be listening. And when I finished, I folded it gently, kissed the envelope, and placed it on the bench beside me. I didn't take a photo, didn't post it, didn't share it with the world. Because that moment, it wasn't for anyone else. Just me and her. Justina 6, Montreal, with ghosts. I flew back to Montreal 3 days later. The city looked the same, but I wasn't. The streets still buzzed with their sharp, beautiful chaos. Languages layered like coats, cold air even in spring, brick buildings whispering secrets in the snowmelt. But something in me had been torn open. Not bleeding, just raw, honest, quiet. I walked slower. I spoke softer. I didn't rush anymore. Not to work, not to cross the street, not to answer texts. The people I knew noticed. "Are you okay?" they asked. "Just tired," I said. But I wasn't tired. I was aware of time, of silence, of how long it takes for regret to settle into the bones and make a home there. I unpacked slowly, took out the notebook. The original letter, the one I never gave her, was still there. I didn't burn it, didn't throw it away, just folded it differently, neater, with care, put it in a box beside her blue envelope. They sit together now. 2 ghosts, one that never got sent, one that came back from the dead. I stopped dating for a while, stopped pretending I wanted anything casual, because I didn't. I wanted someone to see me again, really see me, like she did, but I wasn't ready to be seen just yet. Some nights I'd sit on my balcony with a blanket over my shoulders, coffee in hand, and I'd let the city blur in front of me. That's when she came to visit. Not literally. I'm not that poetic. But her memory, her echo, her voice in my head. Sometimes she'd say nothing. Sometimes I'd hear her laugh. Sometimes I'd just feel her presence, the way she used to rest her chin on my shoulder and hum old Coldplay songs under her breath. I didn't chase the ghost away. I let her stay. Then one day, months later, I met someone. Not like before, not a copy of her, not a replacement. Someone real, someone flawed and vivid, and nothing like Elena, but with the same kind of honesty in her eyes. Her name was Zoe. We met in a bookstore. She was arguing with the clerk about a missing poetry volume. I laughed. She noticed. "Are you always this entertained by chaos?" she asked. "Only the kind that wears scarves in summer," I replied. She smirked. Touché. We talked for 20 minutes that first time. About books, rain, Montreal's broken sidewalks, the best places to get croissants that didn't taste like cardboard. I didn't ask for her number. Not then. But I went back the next week, and the next, and the third time. She was there again. This time she asked my name. It was slow, painfully slow, like trying to learn to walk after forgetting how. I didn't tell her about Eleanor at first, didn't tell her about Calgary or the bench or the letter. I just listened and watched how she lived. She spoke with her hands, bit her lip when thinking, stopped to pet every single dog on the street. She wasn't Elena, and I didn't want her to be. But she was something I never thought I'd find again. A beginning. It was a rainy night, of course it was, when I finally told her. Not everything. Not all at once. But enough. We were in my apartment. Balcony door open, city humming in the distance. She was curled under a blanket, tea in hand. I had someone once, I said. Someone I never told the truth to. She didn't speak. She just waited. She died before I could say it, I added. Silence. Then she whispered, "That's a long thing to carry." I nodded. It is. And she took my hand, just held it. Not to fix me, not to pity me, just to stay. I don't believe in signs, not really. But 2 days later, I passed a bakery with a chalkboard out front. The daily quote read, "Love is not the thing you feel, it's the thing you risk." No sauce, just white chalk, running slightly from the rain. I stood there for a long time, long enough for someone to ask if I was okay. I smiled. I think, for the first time in a year, I actually meant it. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am." Autumn came again. Montreal does fall differently, sharper, busier, full of wind that bites and leaves that never quite settle. But this time I was ready for it. I started walking more, not to escape, but to remember. There's something about fallen leaves that makes you want to live better. Maybe it's the way they fall without asking. Maybe it's how they color everything on their way out. I visited Calgary again that October. It had been exactly 2 years. Zoe came with me. She offered, gently, said it like an invitation, not a test. We didn't stay downtown. We found a quiet Airbnb in Crescent Heights, with a little balcony overlooking the river. It rained the first morning. Naturally. I made coffee. Opened the notebook. The same one. Worn now. Frayed at the corners. But still full of space. I wrote a new letter. "Elena, it's been 2 years, but in some ways it's been longer, because I was losing you long before I admitted it, and mourning you long before I knew how. I met someone. She's not you, but she sees me, like you did, not as the man I pretended to be, but the man I became because I couldn't lose that again. You taught me how to speak, without even knowing. I still see you, in certain mornings, in music, in the way I hesitate before saying something real, in the wind, especially. You always were wind. Thank you for the letter, for the peace, for waiting for me even when I wasn't coming back. You were my first true thing. I'll carry you always, not like a wound, but like a poem. And now, I'll let you rest. With love, still and always, Daniel." Zoe didn't ask what I wrote. She just sat beside me on the bench, the same one, and held my hand while I folded the page and tucked it into the notebook. Then we walked, no words, no rush. We passed the river, watched 2 geese glide low over the water and disappear into the trees. I smiled. Elena would have loved that. We visited her grave together later that afternoon. The trees were still golden, the bench still creaked, but someone had placed fresh sunflowers nearby. I didn't ask who. I didn't need to know. I left the notebook, the whole thing, wrapped it in a plastic sleeve, weighed it down with a small stone, not because I needed to let go, but because she deserved to keep it. On the flight home, Zoe fell asleep on my shoulder. I watched the clouds roll beneath us like slow waves, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel haunted, just full, of memory, of gratitude, of love that had nowhere to go but forward. I still hear her voice sometimes, in dreams, in silence, in rain, but it no longer asks why. It just says thank you, and that's enough. Some nights, I still write her name, not to call her back, not to reopen the wound, just to remember the shape of it, how it feels to write something you once loved, like it's still part of your body. Elena. 6 letters, and in those 6 letters, 1,000 mornings, 100 laughs, 1 silence too long. Life moves, not on, just moves. The way rivers do, carrying everything with them, even the things you thought you'd buried under rocks. I'm not the same man who couldn't speak, who folded letters like lifeboats and never set them sailing. Now I speak. Now I write and send. Now I look people in the eyes and say the things that scare me, because of her. If you're hearing this, if you've ever loved and not said it, if there's a name caught between your teeth that you still haven't whispered, this is your moment. Not later, not tomorrow, not when you have the perfect words. Now. Because later becomes too late, faster than you think, and all you'll have left is the echo of a name you never said out loud. Before it's too late, say it. Even if your voice shakes, even if you think they already know, even if you think they won't say it back, say it. Let the letter leave your hands. Let the silence break. Let love hear itself out loud. I did. Too late. But still, I did. And that somehow is what saved me.